I think we can get started. We've got 34 attendees, which is pretty great. And we're really excited for you all to be here. So by way of introduction, my name is Natalie Perez. I lead business operations here at Mobilize and will be your host, master of ceremonies, if you will, for this webinar. I'm pleased to introduce you to Chelsea Kammerer. She's a senior advisor for here at Mobilize for partnerships. And we've got a special guest from the city of New York, Gabe Esquenazi. Thanks so much for joining. And I'll quickly run you through the agenda. Bear with us with our technical difficulties that we're all trying to learn how to work from home here. It's, you know, a bit of a learning curve.
Go. I had to unmute myself, confirming you can hear me okay.
We can hear you now. Great. So I'll quickly run through the agenda. I already went through the introductions, which is great. Chelsea will give you an overview of Mobilize and our COVID response. Gabe will talk specifically about what the city of New York has done in order to continue organizing in this challenging time. And then we'll kick it over to question and answer. And so if any questions come up during the presentation, feel free to just chat them over to us. And if there's a lull or an opportunity to ask, I'll ask them. If not, we'll wait to the end and I'll ask them then. Additionally, we'll be recording this and sending the recording to you all tomorrow morning. And with that, I'll hand it over to Chelsea.
Great. Thanks, Natalie. Want to give a little bit more background on, he's obviously Deputy Director of Public Engagement in New York. He's been in that role for 2 years. Prior to that, he served in the Obama administration and in the Senate doing public policy. And he was also chief of staff at a field company that was bought by Van. So got a lot of great experience, and apparently, like a lot of men across the country, is having fun with facial hair during quarantine. Nice mustache, Gabe.
Thank you very much.
So as Natalie said, I'm a senior advisor at Mobilize. I've been working in the progressive political space for 16 years. Also on the Obama campaign, also in the Obama administration. I've been with Mobilize for 2 years. I'm very excited to be talking with you all today about the trends we've been seeing and how our partners have taken a very challenging time and truly turned it into an opportunity. The organizing numbers on Mobilize mirror what we saw heading into the Iowa caucuses. I will get into that shortly. While most of the people on the call are familiar with Mobilize, we do have some new folks. So I just wanted to quickly lay the groundwork for what Mobilize is and how we think about it. So Mobilize, we are laser focused on one thing, really. It's driving more action. Get your volunteers to your Mobilize page. We're going to take care of the rest. We're going to make sure they show up, they bring their friends, and they do what you need them to do. It used to be mostly in person. Now it's virtual. I bet it'll go back to in person one day soon. But we are going to drive action. We are laser focused on 3 things. These are the pillars, and they determine everything we do at Mobilize, whether you're on the product and engineering team or the partnerships and success team. We are the go-to destination for your volunteers and members to take action, virtual or in person. Once they get to your Mobilize page, we are going to make sure that they convert and sign up. We're also going to make sure they show up with their automated confirms, which reduce flake rates by 30%. And we're just going to reduce the burden of work that's on you because it's all automated communication. Lastly, we're going to turbocharge your efforts. We're going to make sure your volunteers bring their friends. We're going to make sure they come back. And also our promotions functionality. You're going to be able to share the events that you're working hard on and work with other coalition partners to share their events. There's truly nothing else out there like Mobilize and our network effects. Last couple of points about Mobilize. My favorite point working in politics is 1 volunteer shift is roughly equal to 1 new vote. And also the value of volunteer time is estimated at $25.43 an hour. That goes across campaigns as well as our C3 and C4 partners. Volunteering is expensive, but it's important, and we're going to help you do it as efficiently as possible. Mobilize usage during COVID. This is not the most visually appealing slide, so I apologize for that, but it's what I have to work with. Want to point out two things here before moving on. First, our virtual events, which are the light blue, have gone up 400%. Mobilize has always supported virtual organizing. It's just that the vast majority of our partners were looking to get their members and volunteers offline and engage online. There's obviously been a huge reversal in that trend. The other thing that's exciting to see here, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago, our organizing numbers are matching what we saw heading into the Iowa caucus. And I couldn't pull up the data from this far back for this particular graph, but they match what we saw heading into the 2018 election. This means that people are eager to engage. I think we've all felt similarly, depending on what's been going on in our communities and with our families. We feel helpless, we want to take action. People are responding, and they're doing that through Mobilize. We're very excited about it. There's just a couple stats here I want to point out related to April at sort of the height of social distancing for the time being. There's a couple things that stood out to me. First, 21% of attendees have come from supporters bringing their friends. Volunteering is still a social activity, even if it is done virtually. Those numbers have not dropped off at all. That's very important. Donations, this number is actually out of date. 20% of supporters initiated donation when asked. After you signed up for a shift, you have the option to ask your volunteers whether they want to sign up for another shift, or excuse me, whether they want to invite their friends or if they want to make a donation. Right now, those who are asked to make a donation, 20% initiate the donation, and the average donation they're making is $24. It's higher than it's ever been on the platform. And the last piece I want to acknowledge here is at the very end where it says 48% of all events on Mobilize are hosted by volunteers. That is an incredible number. It shows that volunteers are engaged, they feel empowered. For those of you who have yet to turn on your distributed organizing functionality, I'd encourage you to do it, because what we've seen in the last 2 months is that volunteers are ready and willing to take on a leadership role if they're able. They want to feel good, they want to feel less helpless. I mean, the fact that half the events on Mobilize right now are created by volunteers, even though almost all of the events are virtual, I think that's truly incredible. So just a couple of things I wanted to point out. We are now going to talk about organizing during COVID as it relates to our new reality, but the same goals. So what happens when we're living in this world we're living in, but we still have to achieve our same goals? And to talk about that, I'm going to first turn it over to Gabe.
Perfect. Thank you, Chelsea, and thanks, Natalie, also for organizing this, for having me on. It's been a busy few months here in New York City. We have a lot of work going on, in particular around the COVID response, and so we have been really focused in on how do we pivot our work to continue being able to serve New Yorkers and continue to do outreach in the way that we need to do, given our new reality. And part of that, a big part of that has been, really comes down to two things. One here is the census. And so starting about last year, the city of New York put together a big organization, a big plan, a big budget to augment the federal census's outreach here in New York City. And so that took the form of our own New York City Census Office. And I, as part of my role at the Mayor's Public Engagement Unit, we have kind of been advising them and helping them to get set up with all of their outreach and how they want to structure that, and bringing a lot of the campaign experience that we have and outreach experience that we have to that effort. And so from the start, we had always envisioned using a range of different tactics, right? The kind of the classic campaign tactics to make sure that we were getting the word out, to make sure that New Yorkers are being counted, that New York is getting its fair share of the federal budget in the coming 10 years. And a big part of that is the organizing. And so from the start, we had always been working with Mobilize on organizing all of that, on making sure that all of our our staff, but also all of the thousands of volunteers that have been recruited across the city, from elected officials' offices to community organizations, that they all really had a way to centralize the work that is happening, that we could kind of get all of the training together, that we could get all of the shifts in one place. And obviously, as we shifted to working in a remote environment, this has been really incredibly important for us. And so now that the majority of the work is happening remotely, we are making sure that we've shifted all of our work to do that. And so, the calls, the phone banks, the virtual phone banks that are happening, the virtual text banks that are happening, that is all being organized through Mobilize. And we're really grateful to the team for helping us through that pivot. It was, something that had to happen really quickly, and with the support of the Mobilize team, as well as kind of the team that we were able to build out here in New York City, we have been able to make that happen. That has led to, we have about 10,000 shifts in just the last couple months of phone banks and text banks that we're doing, and our ability to also customize some of the fields here and do some of that work. In New York City, we have, language, for example, is something that's really important to us, of the language that you speak, so that we can make sure that we are targeting our outreach in your language. And so being able to capture that kind of information, that kind of data for us has been really important.
Thanks, Gabe. I'm just going to call out a couple of best practices that I wanted to share with folks that you have been employing. We do user interviews with volunteers and with our partners, but with volunteers weekly. And one thing we constantly hear from them is they don't always understand why they're being asked to do something. And we think it's very important to, as clearly as possible, explain how what they're doing impacts a certain neighborhood or the community you're targeting. And so I love that the city of New York and the census team especially has broken it out into boroughs or different communities or different languages spoken, and really just targeted culturally because of New York in a way that they can kind of slice up the city, which has been great. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is just communities of faith phone bank, just giving opportunities for people who are like-minded to self-identify. So much of what we're seeing, and I'll get into this a little later, is volunteering right now is a social activity for people. Just bringing people together. You don't even have to drive action. It will eventually lead to action, but people want a place together. So Gabe, we've been immensely proud to partner with you, and as now a New Yorker, an adopted New Yorker, I love that we are having a role in something as important as the census in New York. Just want to remind folks that while we are doing the presentation, please put comments and questions in the comments section, and we will go through them during the Q&A at the end. And if possible, Natalie will answer them as we're going. Just wanted to show a few other best practices for folks who still had to sort of keep their eye on the prize, like they could not change their goals, but maybe they're changing their approach. Joe Biden, his team is doing a lot of training. Same thing with our friends at Florida 2020. There is now going to be a bigger emphasis on vote by mail than ever before. So starting to take the time to train people, we do, if anything, COVID has given us like a little bit more time. We take a step back, take a pause. What do we need to do? So often I feel like we rush members and volunteers through things without really training them properly. We've seen the amount of training on the platform go up exponentially as well. Last thing, how again, people who have elections or have something they need to achieve regardless of COVID, how they are using Mobilize to sort of rework their program. I specifically wanted to call this out because this event was hosted through Facebook Live. A bunch of our partners use Facebook. That's great. We love Facebook. You should use it. Just make sure if you are putting an event on Facebook that you include your Mobilize link. That way you can track all your RSVPs in one place. People will get those automated confirms. You'll reduce flake rates by 30%. So it is so important that when you're using Facebook to also make sure you are posting your Mobilize link. We are going to keep going. I thought it was so clever with these subheaders, but now they just seem lame. Organizing during COVID, new reality, new goals. COVID has changed all of our lives. It's also impacted the organizing programs for all of our partners, and it has put forth new goals and altered the missions of partners. So just wanted to talk briefly about how some folks have adapted. Gabe, if you can talk briefly about the program you're running in New York, the phone bank, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for a little bit of context, you know, at the public engagement unit, year-round, we are an organization of roughly 200 staff that really operate kind of a campaign model of proactive outreach. And so our goal is to connect New Yorkers with a whole range of resources they may need, to identify them proactively, to really kind of hold their hand through that process and make sure that they are getting the most out of their government. And this became increasingly needed in our current COVID response. One of the things that we identified pretty early on was that seniors in particular were being affected, not just by in terms of health outcomes, but also in terms of the way that they access resources, the way that they survive on a day-to-day basis. Things as basic as, you know, them getting food, or having access to basic health care. These were all suddenly really critical needs. And so what we came up with here was to basically do a massive phone bank to this group of seniors. And so we did some work on the front end to figure out who are the vulnerable seniors in New York City. A lot of fun data work to figure that out. And then we launched a really massive campaign to talk to these people, to connect them with food, to connect them with friendly visitor calls, right? Just a kind of a volunteer that could talk with them on a weekly basis, to help mitigate some social isolation issues, to connect them to mental health resources, all the things that became really important when you have a group of vulnerable, in most cases low income seniors who are at home for an extended period of time. Their social networks have kind of been disrupted. They're not going to a senior center anymore. They can't have their friends over. In some cases, you know, their family isn't visiting as much because they don't want to risk anybody getting sick. And so we still want to make sure that we're giving them all of the resources that we have available to us. And so we've been calling tens and tens of thousands of, it's well over hundreds of thousands actually at this point, of seniors in New York City, to connect them with that. And as part of that, we used Mobilize. I turned to Chelsea pretty quickly in all of this, with maybe it was a bit of a frantic call, and I said, Chelsea, I need your help here. How can we actually organize this? How can we scale this? We needed to scale our own team internally. And so what we did was to redeploy staff from all different city agencies, whose work had shifted by virtue of having to work from home, and had the skill set and the bandwidth to help make these calls. And so using that redeployed staff, hundreds and hundreds of staff that we have across the city, to make these calls, and organizing all of that through Mobilize, both for the training, but to schedule the shifts, to just centralize everything in one place has been really key for us. And I think something that we could really only done with Mobilize to be able to organize all of that. And Chelsea, I know that we've kept in touch as this project has kind of evolved and grown, but it really is it is really kind of a testament to the flexibility of the staff that we work with, the tools that we have at our disposal, and the tech to allow us to really reach as many seniors as we have. A lot of them, you know, had nowhere else to turn, and so we've been really proud of the work that we've been able to do there. to connect them with these really vital resources.
Thanks, Gabe, for that information, but also for the work you've been doing. I know you've been working day and night and around the clock. One thing I want to flag for those that are doing peer-to-peer texting or doing phone banks, the reason you still want to host those volunteer opportunities on Mobilize are several. One, as Gabe mentioned, you want to have one go-to place for all of your volunteer activities. You don't want to be sending people to different links and confusing them. Two, you get the automated confirms. People can either take action right away or they can schedule their own shift for later. You get all of the data, who's doing what, and then you get the post-shift survey. So you know, did people complete that action and what was their experience like? So just wanted to help remind you why we encourage people to use Mobilize for these types of virtual actions. A couple other examples, texting voters from home. I wouldn't say People's Action totally changed their mission. They were always planning on texting voters, but now it's more about a community check-in. And another example is AOC. She's done a particularly great job of being authentic with her community, providing them, organizing the resources they need. I mean, you know, her community's been hit hardest in the country. And they are doing multiple things. They are still doing political phone banking for AOC. She does have re-election. They're also making calls for food pantry on Wednesdays. She's also still able to sign people up for in-person events, people who want to deliver meals. And then their AOC's team is particularly good at hosting events in several different languages, which we love to see. So that's an example of a partner that's also been doing great work in the city. Just want to run through a couple of examples of folks being creative and being authentic. This is a tough time for everybody. I think if we see our partners having the most success who are leaning into who they are or leaning into the fact that this is a crazy time, we're all just trying our best. Life Aid is doing an event with the LA Dodgers. Obviously not everyone has the Dodgers or Henry Winkler at their disposal. I love this so much. But you know, they're trying to lighten up a situation to get people engaged. And again, people are looking for community right now. A lot of people are alone or only seeing the same few people over and over again. They are craving community. One thing I want to make sure and share about this event is we have about 20% of events on the platform right now are Zoom events, and we support those events. You can send Zoom links after someone RSVPs. You can add them, you can add your email addresses to Zoom calls automatically. Again, they get those text and email reminders to confirm their attendance and make sure they show up. But Zoom has been, it's been a seamless transition from our partners going from using Mobilize to using Mobilize and Zoom. A couple other examples, love that they had a Netflix party next gen North Carolina. Again, you'll get all these notes when we send this around. A game night. Not everything has to be a call to action. I just think that's so important to remember right now. It is about building community, building new relationships, and letting people know, which I know is sincerely true for everyone on this call and the organizations on this call, that you care about everyone's well-being. And in return, they will thank you. As I mentioned, donations are up on the site. The average amount has gone up as well. People understand that this is a hard time and they want to support the organizations that have supported them in their communities. Pandemic postcarding, they turned this into a social event. People were encouraged to bring beverages, and it wasn't just about postcarding, it was, again, socialization. This might be my favorite. For Baby Friday with the Democrats, people just brought their dogs to a Zoom call and everyone had a great time. And it made people want to, because we talked to the DNC after this, their numbers increased for the following event. People just want to feel good. Again, that community is huge. Quick tip for re-entry as states are starting to open back up and you might be considering more in-person events, or you just want to do in-person events to do food delivery or other events where you can help people in your community. I want to make sure and everyone remembers that when you are creating an event, you can create multiple shifts and you can put a max capacity. So you can limit the number of people who can participate. And once that max capacity is hit, that event is removed from your feed. We had partners in Los Angeles School District use Mobilize for a technology drop-off or pickup, I should say. And they spaced out the times people could come and how many family members could come at a time to pick it up. Just want to make sure everyone's practicing social distancing in the best way possible, and this is one way to help with that. A couple more slides. Oh, actually, this is the last slide. And putting together this presentation, I thought about, like, what have we seen more than anything in the last 2 months from our partners who continue to inspire us? I think it's pretty straightforward. Meet the moment with compassion and honesty and give people a chance to help. We've seen with our numbers that people want to help. And if you give them that opportunity, I think they'll show up for you.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was incredibly enlightening and heartwarming for me, at least, especially for Baby Fridays. I think I want to do that with my friends. Any questions? Feel free to add them to the Q&A chat located on the bottom of your screen. These guys won't say it, but they are two of the best organizers. So you can also ask them any questions about organizing, whether during COVID or not during COVID. All right. I agree, Carol Ann. Great specific examples. So Amy is asking, I think, for specific examples about faith-based organizations. I think that question, yes. So
can you read the question?
So what are specific examples about events for faith-based organizations?
That's a great question. Thank you. There are tags on Mobilize. When you are searching for an event, I believe we have an event that's faith, and you'd be able to find events that are related to faith, whether it's a particular church or community that's doing faith-based events. It all depends, though, on whether or not that community self-identified and decided to use the faith tag. One other thing that's exciting that we just launched last week, and Amy, thank you for this reminder. Individual organizations can now create their own event tags. We realized that, I think we originally created a dozen tags, faith, women, LGBTQI. We couldn't possibly satisfy everyone and the need for all the different tags and organizing out there. So we've now created the ability for folks to create their own tags, which can be immensely helpful and will help your volunteers, when they go to your feed, find the exact type of event they're looking to participate in.
Thank you for the feedback.
Yes, thank you. And I really can't underestimate. A bunch of our partners have, it's just about community, checking in on your community, checking in on seniors. It's really been lovely. And the fact that our numbers essentially stayed the same or are going up, really, I think just speaks to the fact that people want to continue to help each other during this immensely stressful time.
Another question from Michael. He's in Oklahoma and all their absentee ballots must be notarized. So they're setting up dozens of drive-through notary locations throughout their large district. Do you have any suggestions on how they can best use Mobilize to drive voters to a drive-through location?
I love that you're doing that. Thank you. So a couple things come to mind. So first, I would make sure that you're, and you know what, I'm just gonna call an audible and stop sharing my screen. Or actually, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen, but I'm gonna go to a Mobilize feed. I would do a couple things. So, sorry about that. In the private events section, I would make sure that you are very specific about what the instructions are for what you want people to do. So here about this event, you can write it here. You can also send private details once someone has RSVP'd. So you can reinforce whatever you told them about safety and instructions. I would make sure to do what I mentioned earlier about spacing out different times people can sign up for events, limiting the capacity. I would also host trainings ahead of time. I would like start with virtual trainings before people start doing this in person. And one great thing about Mobilize is we have this post-shift survey that after someone completes a shift, it asks for their feedback. So I would go in to make sure and read the feedback and comments from your supporters, so you have a real understanding for what their experience was like. Did they feel safe? That sort of thing. Hopefully that was helpful.
Great. Sam was curious to hear some of the positives of using Mobilize as a sole site for signups again. They've seen strong numbers when diversifying their outreach / providing people with many different ways to plug into the campaign.
We support using, so at the end of the day, what you want to do is drive your volunteers to Mobilize so they have one place to take action. That said, you have to push them in a number of different channels. I think right now, 30% of people get to Mobilize through email, through our partners sending them emails. I think 20% get there from social media, so posting on Facebook, Twitter. And then I think the rest come from text and advertising. We have some partners who pay for digital ads in order to drive traffic to Mobilize. You should be running a multi-channel approach to getting people to sign up on Mobilize. But in terms of driving action, it's so simple. We've now had over 2.2 million people use the platform. That's progressive-minded volunteers. They're familiar with the functionality. You get the automated confirms. So I agree with you that you want to have this omni-channel approach, but it's driving them to this one place, Mobilize, which is getting better and better every day, and we're constantly improving it. Hope that helped.
Stephen is asking, what other platforms besides Zoom have you found that are user-friendly and already in use with seniors?
I mean, it is crazy, but Zoom has dominated the world. I think Google Hangouts, I have seen some partners use Google Hangouts still. And I think the technology is very similar to Zoom, like in terms of how you use it and people's tech savviness and the ability to use it. And otherwise, some of our partners, when they have very large conference calls, like the Biden campaign or Mrs. Obama's One We All Vote, they use a professional service that patches in the calls. But I will say, when it comes to doing conference calls or webinars or trainings, again, around 20% of the partners are using Zoom. But I think it's everyone's preference. I don't know, Natalie, have you seen other things either on the site or in general?
Not that I've seen. I think it's a better solution than something like WebEx or Skype, which usually require a couple more steps to launch their videos. I love that one of our attendees is answering. Lori said Amazon Chime and Vonage, as well as Google Hangouts. It's great. And yeah, those are the only ones I've seen.
Yeah, and good point about Gmail. I get a little, you know, I'm like such a Google person, but you're right. If you don't have Gmail, it can be limiting and intimidating. But thank you. I love that there's a discussion happening here. Do you have any firms to recommend to host large events? I do. Email me offline. if anyone needs help, a friend of mine owns a firm. I can help get a discount. There's several out there that do a great job, but I will happily recommend them to you. Yep, they could do virtual, or they can do just pure calls.
One more question, actually, from Lori. What features are there for translation of Mobilize pages into Spanish?
Great question. So anything you control the language of, the content, anything you can write can be written in Spanish or another language. The title of the event details, the confirm, the private details, and then the confirm message that goes out. Things that are automated, text message, emails, those cannot be changed to another language. This is something that's come up previously. We are a small but mighty and growing tech company. The ability to host Mobilize fully in other languages is a huge undertaking. We've heard it from our partners. We obviously work in the progressive space, and there is many other languages people organize in besides English. So there is a workaround. As you saw with AOC's Ocasio-Cortez, her team was able to do it. In fact, everyone might want to go there and take a look. It's just mobilize.us//Ocasio-Cortez. They have a bunch of events in Spanish. You can see how they do it. You can even sign up for an event and see how they do the follow-up in Spanish. Not an ideal, well, I wouldn't say it's not ideal. It is a workaround. It is not a permanent solution, and we are aware of that.
Another question, is there a search field on the homepage that is a little more user-friendly than filter? This is on the volunteer-facing side. Yeah.
Great. Natalie, let's write this down because our product and engineering team is actually running some experiments next week on making the search functionality a little more user-friendly. One thing that we developed and launched 2 months ago, maybe it was 2.5 months ago, which I loved, was geocoding. So the second you came to Mobilize, it pulled events closest to your zip code, which was super helpful. It's become a little less helpful in a time of virtual organizing. But I think we would agree with you that our search functionality could be a little more user-friendly, could be more intuitive. If you have thoughts on like what you'd like to see, in all sincerity, we're going to have contact information at the end of this. One, either post it in the chat, but two, email us. One thing I love about Mobilize is like user feedback informs the product decisions we make. Like we truly care about how our partners use the product, how volunteers use the product, what they like about it. So hearing this from you is fortuitous because we're running experiments on the search functionality next week. So please give us your feedback in the next 24 hours if possible.
Great. We have a question from Matt in the chat.
So first of all, I was a regional field director. I lived in Davenport, Iowa, which is in Scott County. So I love this on the Obama campaign way back in the day. Matt, it depends on our agreement with the Iowa Dems, just so folks know, being totally transparent. We work with, I think, 27 Democratic parties. As a county party, actually, you do get access to Mobilize through the Iowa Dems. So you should actually contact the Iowa Dems. I do not believe there is a cost for you. So maybe contact Melissa Watson or someone else, the Iowa Dems, and they will hook you up. Scott County Dems, love it.
Chelsea is a celebrity in the Iowa Democratic Party. You know that. She's too modest to say it, but it's true.
It just means I'm old.
Any other questions? Oh, great.
Hi, man. Lori, please, I'm seeing your note. Email me offline. Let's talk about making this work. Let's talk about how we can be helpful to you.
And keep doing the work you're doing.
Cool. Do we want to talk about just we'll send around the deck. We'll send around
We'll
the
also send
video.
a recording. Yes.
We'll send a recorder. You're also going to get, or let me share my screen. You're also going to get that post-shift survey since you all RSVP'd for this event. Let us know what you thought. We do value your comments, so would love that. And then in terms of contact information, if you're not yet on Mobilize and you're looking to join, you can go to join.mobilize.us and sign up there. My email is chelsea@mobilize.us. We also have free Mobilize accounts for C3s and government entities that are working in direct response to COVID. So please sign up. Access originally went through May. We've extended that through the end of June. We want to get as many people on Mobilize as possible because we believe in what we've built and we believe it's helping people during this challenging time. I think that's it.
Thank you, everyone. Yes.
Thank you all so much. All right. Bye.